another San Diego ASA News Brief. This is Eugene Davidovich reporting from San Diego.
We have a new California Attorney General. Kamala Harris has been elected as California's top law enforcement official, and since she has been the California AG-elect, she has not come out with positions on medical marijuana, with the exception of the most recent ABC News interview where Kamala Harris was interviewed and asked about her position on medical marijuana.
I believe the Attorney General can play a role and should play a role in convening law enforcement and others who are involved with this issue to agree on standards. We want to ensure that we weed out, that we can detect and then weed out abuses. And in the case of medical marijuana, it means a number of things, including ensuring that there's not bad product out there that's being sold to sick people.
To debate and discuss this issue today with us, we have Marcus Boyd, a San Diego Americans for Safe Access board member, and Terrie Best, also a board member of Americans for Safe Access, two individuals who are very knowledgeable on this issue. Welcome to the program, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Eugene.
Marcus, I'd like to start with you. You know, I took a look at the footage here about her questions, and it seems like she wasn't very clear about whether or not she would support dispensaries or whether or not she has any kind of plans to change the law. She even talked about involving law enforcement in dealing with these sorts of issues.
Yeah, I kind of heard a different Kamala Harris than you did, I think, and only because I've kind of read back into her press release, specifically with regard to medical marijuana, and that was right after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that medical marijuana was not exempt from federal prosecution. And it was her response to that federal Supreme Court decision that really made me feel like she was definitely on our side, and then things that she said in that news brief recently, I think, coincide directly with what she said back in 2005.
How so? I mean, she's talking about involving law enforcement. Terrie, how do you feel about her statements regarding involving law enforcement in deciding the future of medical marijuana?
Well, I'm concerned. I don't know where we started this culture of treating patients like they have something to prove, like they have to toe the line as far as being lawful and that sort of thing. When we're dealing with medicine and sick people, it's hard enough to deal with oncologists and radiology and all of those other things that you have to keep straight. But now to have to answer to law enforcement over your medicine just seems like the wrong path to me. I wish we could back up and get the health department more involved rather than having law enforcement automatically just having law enforcement being the regulatory body.
Let's take a look at specifically what Kamala said in this interview. She specified that she thinks that we should convene law enforcement and other concerned individuals in deciding a regulatory structure, a regulatory body of sorts for medical marijuana. And also she discussed preventing bad medicine from going to patients, both, at least the latter, the bad medicine from going to patients. I think that's not a bad thing, but it sounds to me like she could have been a lot more specific and clear and maybe reassured patients in that interview. Marcus?
Well, I think that the interview that you're talking about, it was really an excerpt from it, and there wasn't a lot of time that she wanted to devote to that. But in greater detail, she has said in a press release, "As the chief law enforcement official of San Francisco, it is my duty to protect the most vulnerable among us from harm. That includes those who are sick and seek care through medical marijuana, medicinal marijuana, rather," she said. "I pledge to continue this work," is what she said. And she goes on to say, "In my own life, I have had loved ones and close friends who relied on medical marijuana to relieve their suffering and even prolong their lives." So she's had people live and die using medical marijuana. She goes on to say, "It is wrong to pursue policies that punish Americans that are sick and use small amounts of marijuana in private as prescribed by a doctor." Somebody that says that with respect to medical marijuana is somebody I want to have talk to Bonnie.
And let's hope that she does. As we all heard in a previous news brief that we covered, Bonnie Dumanis is on an advisory committee for Kamala Harris, the new AG, for recidivism, I believe, which is another issue that brought a lot of concern to patients. So first, the news of Bonnie Dumanis, the very strict San Diego district attorney who was on a fierce fight against patients, being the new advisor to Kamala Harris in the issue of recidivism, and now with Kamala Harris not being as clear on her future stance, does start to raise some issues. However, what you read, Marcus, does provide some reassurance and some comfort. Hopefully, she won't, like many other politicians, flip-flop on the issue, but will, in fact, respect state law and the sick people's need for a quality medicine.
Terrie, you were saying that the putting the regulatory body in the hands of the officials, police that is, would not necessarily be the best, and I absolutely agree with you. And I would have to look to how San Francisco currently does it, but as I recall, it is done through the public health and safety group, where the police only intervene when it has to do with issues outside safe access and normal use of medical marijuana. But I agree with you 100% on that, and I hope that she makes sure to not allow police direct control. But to not bring them to the table would also be a mistake, obviously.
Right. Well, I guess my position is we can't separate the patients from the dispensaries. The patients are the dispensaries, and the dispensaries are the patients. And if she's going to support the patients and the right to use medicine, and by the way, I applaud her for coming out like that and saying those things about her personal life and her family members, but if she doesn't include the dispensaries in that protective bubble that she has for patients, then I think we're on the wrong track. So that was my point. But Ms. Harris, I think she has a wonderful career ahead of her, and I really hope that she does the right thing.
I agree on the dispensary level. I wasn't going to add, but I'm glad you brought that up, and I think I will read this other paragraph because it's really important to what you just said. She went in that same press release, she went on to say, taking away safe access to this medicine will not stop patients from using medical marijuana. On the contrary, fear of arrest or prosecution by federal authorities could discourage patients and their caregivers from safely accessing it at dispensaries and force them to turn to other, more dangerous means. As a community, we do not want to go back to the days when frail and sick people could be forced to purchase medical marijuana in city parks from drug dealers under the cover of night. This decision, she's referring to the U.S. Supreme Court's decision, this decision threatens the safety of the frail and elderly and puts communities at risk. So I think she really has talked to dispensaries specifically.
It sounds like she is on our side. It also sounds like with the experience that she has in San Francisco, and just to briefly go back to how San Francisco does things, they do have a medical cannabis commission that looks over the operations of facilities in San Francisco and addresses some of these issues. They also have a lot of self-regulatory bodies there that focus on self-regulations, which is something that we desperately need in San Diego, and we need to support groups like the Association of Clinical Dispensaries and other folks trying to organize and create a regulatory body. Thank you both, Marcus Boyd and Terrie, for joining us today and taking a look at this issue that is so very critically important to medical marijuana patients here in San Diego.
Thank you, Eugene.
Thanks, Eugene.
Thanks for tuning in to another San Diego ASA News Brief. To view all of our news briefs, please visit our channel on YouTube at youtube.com/safeaccesssd. Get involved, get active, make a difference. Visit our San Diego page at safeaccesssd.org and join ASA at safeaccessnow.org.